Megumi's final Shikigami will destroy the entire Jujutsu Kaisen universe, but how? Ever since Megumi's 10 Shadows technique was introduced into the series, we've all been baffled on the kinds of different Shikigami that he could summon, but with the involvement of his totality, it only adds more to the endless questions we have about Megumi's curse technique. So far we've been introduced to technically 7 out of 10 of Megumi's Shikigami, leaving us with 3 unknown Shikigami which are yet to be revealed, but through Megumi's incomplete domain expansion and the spine we see emerging from it, could be the biggest hint to Megumi's final and most powerful Shikigami. But before we get into the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit that notification bell to stay updated with my latest uploads. This video will contain spoilers from the manga. Sukuna's interest in Megumi is something out of the ordinary. At first we thought that Mahoraga was the key to Megumi's secret, but the way Sukuna reacted to him clearly proved to us that he wasn't expecting Mahoraga at all. So with that said, Megumi's domain expansion is the biggest factor in revealing his most powerful and final Shikigami, as this relates back to a monster from Japanese folklore during the Heian period. This specific monster will destroy Jujutsu Kaisen and is what Sukuna seeks. So why don't we understand more about Megumi's supposed final Shikigami? Before we reveal Megumi's supposed final and most powerful Shikigami, it's best if we have a quick rundown on the 10 Shadows technique and how it will play a huge role in unlocking this mysterious entity which I believe that Sukuna is after. What we understand about the 10 Shadows technique is that it's an inherited ability of the Zenin clan. It is also labelled as one of the most powerful curse techniques in all of Jujutsu Kaisen, alongside the likes of the Gojo family's Limitless technique. The 10 Shadows technique uses shadows to its advantage, which I mean is obvious from the name of the technique. Anyways, from what we understand is that there are 10 different Shikigami which are a part of this ability, but we've only been revealed to 7 so far. So which 7 Shikigami are we talking about? The first Shikigami, which is Megumi's Divine Dogs, as both dogs count as a single Shikigami, but due to Megumi's ability of totality, where a deceased Shikigami's power is transferred to another, Shikigami to combine their powers, thus creating Divine Dog's totality, since Megumi's white dog was killed mercilessly by the finger bearer. So Divine Dog's totality counts as Megumi's first Shikigami. The next would be New, and I'm actually a massive fan of this owl Shikigami due to its majestic nature. Third would be Toad. At first I was a little skeptical about this Shikigami, but when I saw Megumi using the extension technique, Wells Unknown Abyss, against Aoi Todo, I realized how powerful Megumi Shikigami are. Up at 4th is Great Serpent. We notably saw this Shikigami going all out against Sukuna during the earlier chapters of this series, and it did not disappoint. 5th would be Max Elephant, which was revealed to us during Megumi's battle against Noritoshi Kamo. Up at 6th is Rabbit Escape, which we got to see in Megumi's brief battle against his own father, Toji, and using the multiple rabbits as an escape, but it was futile against someone like Toji. The 7th and most recent Shikigami, a part of Megumi's arsenal, which we've seen so far in the series, is Mahoraga. This was a last resort which Megumi had used when he had his back against the wall against Haruta. The only problem with Mahoraga is that Megumi is yet to control such a force. Mahoraga's insane power was able to adapt and overcome some of Sukuna's attacks, and keeping in mind, Sukuna had consumed 15 fingers at that point, but it wasn't totally shown whether Mahoraga was totally killed. All we remember seeing was Sukuna using his flame bow and arrow to obliterate him. Regardless, even if Mahoraga were to be exercised by Sukuna, Megumi's totality ability would only store the power of Mahoraga's into something much more devastating. But with that mentioned, we've noted down 7 of Megumi's Shikigami so far, but what about the other 3 remaining Shikigami? That for now will have to stay in the dark. When and how will Megumi reveal the Shikigami is unknown to us, but if Megumi was capable of unleashing a monster like Mahoraga from his arsenal, I most certainly believe that the next 3 Shikigami are going to be on a completely different level. However, I do have a video theorizing this, and I highly recommend you guys to check that out if you haven't already. Anyways, moving on to Megumi's totality ability. Megumi's ability to merge dead Shikigami with other current Shikigami is what truly makes him such an overpowered character in the series. What we noticed is how the Divine Dogs merged together to create Divine Dog totality, adding such immense power to his dog. With that being said, I believe that Megumi's totality ability only works with other corresponding Shikigami, sort of how formulas work, since I know that Akutami will obviously put these kind of conditions on Megumi to not make him more overpowered than he already is. But surprisingly, this totality of Megumi's will not be the deciding factor of his final Shikigami, but instead it will grant much more powerful Shikigami at his disposal in the process. So what exactly is going to play the biggest part in Megumi's final and most powerful Shikigami? It's his domain expansion. The Chimera Shadow Garden is easily a terrifying domain, but what's hidden beyond it is what intrigues the king of all curses. In the more recent chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen, when Megumi had unleashed his domain expansion against Reggie, we noticed that he had improved a lot since the Death Painting arc. Although it was still incomplete, there was a massive hint which points to Megumi's hidden power. As soon as Megumi summons his domain against Reggie, we see a sort of spine emerging from the back with what appears to be a nervous system appearing from it. What we currently understand is that Megumi's domain expansion is still incomplete. Although it's already extremely powerful, his domain is still in the works, and it makes total sense. But I feel like the spine is something we've all ignored or looked past. So who or what exactly does this spine signify? I believe that it is Megumi's final and most powerful Shikigami which Sukuna seeks. The Heian period is known for being the golden age of sorcerers, a time in which the likes of Kenjaku, Uraume, Master Tengen, and Ryomen Sukuna were about. They most definitely saw most likely everything under the kitchen sink when it came down to Jujutsu techniques, and in a bid to prevent Ryomen Sukuna, a 10 Shadows technique user may have revealed the full form of his final Shikigami. This was probably the deal maker for Sukuna, because if we take it back to Sukuna's encounter with Megumi at the beginning of the series, he spoke about the use of shadows as though he knew what he wanted and called it interesting. He also said to Megumi straight to his face that he has wasted potential, meaning Sukuna fully understands how much more powerful Megumi could become and what life-changing abilities he can plague the Jujutsu world with. So with Sukuna spurring on Megumi to become more powerful and reach for the stars, it will lead Megumi to awakening an insanely overpowered Shikigami that will wreak havoc on a similar scale to Sukuna. So who or what is this final Shikigami? That would have to be a giant spirit monster named Gasha Dokuro, as this being originates from Japanese folklore and more specifically ran rampant during the Heian period of the mid-900s. The earliest written tale about the Gasha Dokuro came in the Nihon Ryoiki, as this was written between the years of 787 and 824, which was of course the Heian period. Before we go any further, another reason why I firmly believe that this Gasha Dokuro is going to be Megumi's final and most powerful Shikigami is because of how Akutami is heavily influenced by Japanese folklore that occurred during the Heian period. In one way or another, he manages to involve the monsters or spirits from Japanese history and includes them into Jujutsu Kaisen. But from what I've revealed, what is this Gasha Dokuro and how does it function? Well, it's a huge skeletal monster which wanders around the countryside in the darkest hours of night. Their teeth chatter and bones rattle with a gachi gachi sound, which is the spirit's namesake. If they happen to stumble upon a human out late on the roads, the Gasha Dokuro will silently creep up and catch their victims, crushing them in their hands or biting off their head. What makes things even more interesting is this key piece of information. It is known that Gasha Dokuro are said to possess the powers of invisibility and indestructibility, since it is composed of bones of people who are already deceased, though Shinto charms are said to ward them off. Otherwise, a Gasha Dokuro will continue hunting its prey until its pent-up anger is released, causing the bones to crumble and the Gasha Dokuro to collapse. So why have I related the Gasha Dokuro to being Megumi's final Shikigami? Well, that's simply because of its skeletal shape that it takes, with Megumi's domain expansion slowly but truly showing a shape of a skeletal spine, as this is the biggest hint of these two being related to one another. Once Megumi's domain expansion is complete, that's when the Gasha Dokuro will appear in its full glory. So the Gasha Dokuro cannot be killed until it's let out all of its pent up anger and self-destructs once satisfied. This relates to Megumi's character a lot. There are rarely any times when Megumi goes haywire and shows up his true anger. Most of the time he is as calm as they come, and with all the anger and hatred stuffed inside of himself, it will erupt within the Gasha Dokuro, meaning Megumi will become one with his final Shikigami, sort of how Madara is able to control his Susanoo. The same effect will happen between Megumi and the Gasha Dokuro. However, if Megumi were to use his final Shikigami and go on a rampage, it will most definitely cost him his life, because if you go by the logic of the folklore tale, if the Gasha Dokuro self-destructs once its anger has been unleashed, the same will happen to the user of the Shikigami. That's just my theory, but for Megumi to acquire such a power, he will need to go above and beyond, and this will fall back on Megumi's idea of sacrifice. It will be an honourable way for Megumi to go. But another thing which interests me even more is the fact that we notice a nervous system coming from out of the spine during Megumi's domain expansion. expansion. Could this skeletal being turn into something more than a skeleton and into an actual monster? It could be a way in which both Megumi and the Gashadokuro to link up, but who knows. So what aspect of this Gashadokuro could interest Sukuna? As of right now, I'm not too sure, since what we understand by the folklore is how Gashadokuro are basically indestructible and only self-destruct until all of its pent-up anger is gone. Could there be some more powers and abilities of Megumi's final Shikigami, and could it be what Sukuna has been seeking all this time? Megumi has insane potential. The more you dive deeper into the iceberg, which is Japanese folklore, the more you realize how certain spirits, or should I say yokai, have an impact on the JJK series. From the discovery of this Gashadokuro, some could even argue that it isn't even a part of the 10 Shadows technique, but that is where you are wrong. Just to clarify, Megumi's domain expansion is an extension of his 10 Shadows technique, meaning that the Gashadokuro might not even be the 10th Shikigami, but instead the 11th unknown Shikigami, which is why I referred to it as the final Shikigami. Megumi has countless Shikigami in which he can use his totality on, so I reckon towards the endgame of Jujutsu Kaisen, Megumi will have 3 or 4 disastrous Shikigami at his disposal, and the Gashadokuro will be his last resort. But with that said, what do you guys think about the Gashadokuro being his final Shikigami, and do you reckon it could be his 10th Shikigami or possibly his 11th hidden Shikigami that only he's been able to unlock? Be sure to let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you all in the next one.